Good morning. Hopefully, it looks like you're fresh and ready to go today. So we appreciate that. You put in a long day yesterday, and we hope that you are able to apply some of what we learned and shared yesterday to your conversations today. We're pleased to start out this morning with a talk from Joan Frye, who is acting deputy head of the Office of Integrative Activities at the National Science Foundation. Joan received her PhD in physical chemistry at the University of Chicago. She also took a NATO postdoctoral fellowship at the Technical University of Vienna, and she also had several other postdocs at national labs. Her first faculty appointment in 1989 was at Howard University in chemistry. And in 1995, she began serving the National Science Foundation as program officer in experimental physical chemistry. And she's led various programs and served in various numerous collaborative roles at the National Science Foundation since. Most recently, in 2012, she had a one-year appointment as a senior policy analyst in the White House Office of Science Technology Policy. And in 2013, she returned to the National Science Foundation. She is going to give an NSF perspective on investing in STEM academic careers. So you are set to go, Joan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's my pleasure to be here virtually. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend in person. And I want to convey regrets from my colleague Bernice Anderson, who was going to be giving this presentation today, but she is involved in an effort, a long-standing effort at NSF. The Committee on Equal Opportunity in Science and Engineering, or CEOS, is meeting today, and since we haven't quite figured out how to clone ourselves, she asked me to give this talk in her stead. So I appreciate your invitation and an opportunity to talk about some efforts here at NSF on career-life balance. And hopefully this will not take the full 40 minutes, so we should have some time for some question and answers at the end. The first slide has my email address. If any questions come up that I'm unable to answer, please do not hesitate to give me to contact me if I can be of assistance. Okay. Okay, there we go. I thought as a first step, I would present a little bit of some data, actually, on participation of women and underrepresented minorities at different stages, different career stages. I've included in one of my final slides the data sources for these numbers. I actually found it kind of interesting because I don't particularly give these types of presentations very often, so it afforded me an opportunity to look at some of the recent data from our National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics. And if we look at, people's intentions to major in STEM fields as first-year undergraduate students, the numbers actually are not particularly bad. Yes, we would like to see 50% of women and, comparable numbers for women and men. But when we look at women and men and underrepresented minorities, the numbers are surprisingly high and somewhat encouraging. I mean, people like science in this society. And even as we look at the bachelor's degree recipients, we see women are actually gaining more bachelor's degrees in STEM disciplines than men in 2012. And unfortunately, the numbers for underrepresented minorities fall precipitously, and there are lots of reasons for that. I think we can speculate. There have been a number of studies, and people are attempting to address that. I'm going to be focusing primarily on women today, but the numbers, many of these activities that I will be describing also have strong efforts to increase participation of underrepresented minorities. And when we go and look at STEM PhD recipients, again, numbers from 2012 indicate that 40%, almost 41% of our STEM PhD recipients in 2012 went to women. PhD degrees went to women. And you can clearly see, looking at the data from 1992 and 2002, that there's an upward trend. So to a certain extent, the data are encouraging. Of course, it varies tremendously by discipline, but we're going in the right direction. And then finally, even if we look at research and teaching faculty, although there is clearly a drop at each step, and we look at bachelor's degree recipients, PhD recipients, and then research and teaching faculty, women are still not, there's still a positive trend. The numbers of research and teaching faculty have increased over the years. The number of minorities stay disastrously low in the research and teaching faculty. And I, again, have to emphasize that even though the numbers for women are showing some positive trends, it's extremely discipline specific. Biology, the numbers are much better. Computer science, the numbers are dismal. Math and physics, the numbers are very poor. So there is no one-size-fits-all, and I actually, in the process of preparing this talk, I got in touch with my colleagues throughout the foundation because I was kind of curious to see what discipline-specific activities are going on, also in addition to the foundation-wide activities. So I hope to be able to present a few of those efforts later in the talk. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about, because so many, as you can see, as you go from one career stage to the next, there's a fair amount of attrition. NSF has, over the years, tended to focus its efforts on those transition points. So we're very much, we have a number of programs that are designed to encourage women and underrepresented and other underrepresented groups to make that career transition from undergrad to grad, from grad to postdoc, and then from postdoc to the early faculty career. And one of our flagship programs is the Graduate Fellowship Research Program, Graduate Research Fellowship Program. This is an NSF-wide program, as you probably are aware. It's been in existence for close to 45 years. The most recent numbers from 2015 are quite encouraging. More than half of the recipients are women, and close to 25% of the recipients are members of underrepresented groups and persons with disabilities. So the numbers, and as you are probably more than aware, by underrepresented groups, in NSF parlance, we're talking about African American, Hispanic, Native American, and Alaskan Native, Pacific Islanders, etc. So these numbers are actually quite promising, particularly in light of the fact that for many years, NSF actually had a graduate research fellowship program and a minority graduate research fellowship program. Due to a lawsuit, NSF eliminated the minority graduate research fellowship program probably about 15 to 20 years ago now. It's been a while. And right after that program disappeared, frankly, the numbers of underrepresented minorities who applied to the general program dropped precipitously. So I was very heartened to see 494 recipients in 2015 were members of underrepresented groups. I was very pleasantly surprised to see those numbers. The Alliances for Graduate Education and the Professoriate is another very long-standing program that makes strategic investment. This is a program in the Division of Human Resource Development, or HRD, in the Education and Human Resources Directorate. And AGAP makes strategic investments in new models for STEM graduate education, postdoctoral training, and academic STEM career preparation. And the whole goal, or one of the goals of this AGAP program, is to better understand issues that impact the participation, the preparation, the retention, and the advancement of underrepresented minorities in STEM. And I actually took this language from the solicitation, but I specifically added retention because that is our goal. I mean, I think there has been a number of efforts over the years, and I'm probably preaching to the choir in many cases, of efforts to recruit and excite and interest women and underrepresented minorities into STEM disciplines. And it's been a relatively more recent understanding that there has to be an equal, if not greater, attention paid to retention. I remember as I've been in the American Chemical Society for many, many years, and I was on the Committee of Minority Affairs for that society for years. And we have a luncheon speaker, and it was about 6 or 7 years ago that a social scientist whose name escapes me at present gave a very interesting luncheon presentation on retention of minority faculty. And her data were very disturbing because the data clearly indicate a real revolving door of faculty, of minority faculty members in terms of being recruited and not particularly being retained at our academic institutions, and they're just moving from one institution to another. I was very intrigued when I had the debriefing conversation with your organizing committee on the 9th of October, and there was mention of a exit interview, development of a common exit interview that will be implemented. I'm very much interested in staying abreast of those activities because it's of very strong interest. We have to have a better idea of the factors that come into play in terms of retention and advancement of women and underrepresented minorities in academia and in STEM. So AGAP is one program that invests in research and broadening participation on these topics. Okay, another program that I wanted to highlight is Advance. I'm preaching to the choir to a certain extent, but I'm hoping that there's some nuggets of new information in here that you will find useful. But the Advance program, as you're very much aware, is focused on increasing participation and advancement of women in academic, science, and engineering careers. So it takes a systems approach to increasing representation and advancement. There is a very strong emphasis on both innovation and sustainability. Again, this question of retention of the long-term perspective that's necessary to have an impact. And obviously, by increasing participation of women in these disciplines, we are talking about development of a more diverse workforce. And of course, there are 3 tracks you are possibly aware of. One is very much an institutional transformation. We cannot recruit and interest people into disciplines when they are the only one. Frankly, if there's a sense that there's a tokenism at play, if there is a sense that the institution is not being modified to be more welcoming, more accommodating, more inclusive in its outlook and its perspective. There's also so the institutional transformation track is looking to make and support large-scale and long-scale comprehensive changes at the institution itself. There's also the institutional transformation catalyst track, which is looking at self-assessment and evaluation of effectiveness of strategies. And finally, the Partnerships for Learning and Adaptation Networks, or PLAN, is looking at adapting and implementation of particular strategies for change. These are, I believe Beth Michnik spent some time yesterday talking about this program in particular because she was a rotator in HRD a year ago, and Advance was her responsibility. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I'm assuming there were questions that came up in her talk yesterday. Then again, we have our flagship efforts that people are perhaps aware of. One of these long-standing program is the Faculty Early Career Development Program. This started around the time I came to NSF back in '95, so it's roughly 20 years old. It's an agency-wide program, so all disciplines supported by NSF participate in this program. Frankly, there are some parts of the agency that receive very, very few proposals. I was surprised to find out when I queried my colleagues in the last couple of days. And so there are some concerns why early career faculty members are not submitting proposals in certain disciplines. Applicants must hold a PhD or equivalent degree, doctoral degree. They have to be untenured, but they must be in a tenure track position. And the award total for an individual is $500,000 for 5 years. I'm sorry, that's a typo, I apologize. $400,000 for 5 years, except in the division of Polar in the Geosciences Directorate and the Biological Sciences Directorate, where the maximum is $500,000. These are very wonderful opportunities for early career faculty members to get their foot in the door without competing against faculty members who've had long-term, long-standing grants from NSF. There has to be a very strong emphasis on not only the research, but also the integration of the education effort with the research. So I encourage your junior faculty members at your institutions to take a look at this solicitation and to reach out to their disciplinary program directors to get more information, because it is not uniformly, the applications across the foundation are not uniform. They don't reflect the population of faculty members in the different disciplines, and it's a question why people are not applying. I think it's a great opportunity for early career faculty members. The Science and Technology Centers is another one of our flagship efforts. Again, this is an agency-wide program. All disciplines supported by NSF play in this program. There's a very, very strong emphasis on professional development of graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. We've given supplementary funding to the cohort. This program has actually been around since the 80s. The competition is every 3 to 4 years, and unfortunately, the size of the number of awards is rather limited. These are funded at $5 million a year for 5 years and a possibility of a 5-year renewal. So they're really very competitive. This is a very competitive program. But the existing awardees for a given year form a cohort. So all the students and postdocs come together from the existing centers for professional development. And we also encourage new hires of faculty members in some of the disciplines that are developed. Most of these centers are working to create, in many ways, new interdisciplinary fields of study. And so there's considerable development of new faculty hires in these new disciplines. So these are just two examples of long-standing programs with a strong emphasis on early career development and also in new disciplines. There are other programs such as EPSCoR, the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. Again, this program is designed to address the inequalities that exist insofar as certain states have received, relative to other states, lesser amounts of NSF funding. So I believe those states that receive, I think the formula right now is 0.75% or less of NSF grant money are eligible to apply for EPSCoR funding. Basically, all the different funding agencies have something like an EPSCoR, although they may call it something else, or they may have slightly different formulas for determining eligibility. But I cite this program for a couple of reasons. It is a broadening participation program, but it's on a geographical scale. So the institutions that participate are in, as I mentioned, states that have traditionally received less money. There's a very strong partnership between the academic institutions that have EPSCoR funding and also the states in which the state governments in which the governments in the states in which they reside. I particularly point out this program also because it turns out that 50% of the historically black colleges and universities are located in EPSCoR states, since many of the EPSCoR states and many of HBCUs are in the South. And in fact, 69% of our tribal colleges are located in EPSCoR states. So there is a very strong participation of underrepresented minority students in EPSCoR-funded activities. Again, there's an impact beyond the project given the partnership between the academic, the government, and the private sector. So finally, getting to I've hoped I've kind of given you a little bit of perspective of some of the long-standing programs that were in existence before the NSF Career Life Balance initiative began back in 2012. And I don't know if many people remember when this was rolled out, but there was actually a White House ceremony 3 years ago to announce the rollout of the NSF Career Life Balance. It's actually a 10-year initiative. NSF has implemented a number of steps that we hope will have an impact. And frankly, some of these are steps both external to the foundation in terms of our career, in terms of our grantees, but also actually internal to the foundation. I want to cite, for instance, NSF has taken a number of steps to allow people who need to take a leave of absence for dependent care responsibility. There's tons of evidence indicating that we lose women, particularly, at multiple stages of their career because of responsibilities either with child care or elder care responsibilities. Many women delay their careers, their academic careers past the childbearing age, and it's very difficult to catch up. I realize, again, I'm talking to the choir. Many women and men, frankly, need some flexibility in their careers as different situations arise around dependent care issues. So NSF has been publicizing the fact that people can request no-cost extensions if they need to take a leave of absence during an NSF award for dependent care responsibilities. This is a long-standing feature of NSF awards, but I don't think we had done a very good job of publicizing that. As part of the Career Life Balance Initiative, we have implemented a policy that allows grantees to actually request funds to replace project personnel during a leave of absence. So things don't have to come to a screeching halt if your grantee, if your principal investigator requires a leave of absence, he or she, because these are all gender neutral and efforts, by the way, can request funds for research technicians or the equivalent to assist to keep the research going if they do wind up having to take a leave of absence. And then there are a number of specific solicitations that have added language along these lines. So the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, career PIs, the institutions that receive GRFP money can request supplements to support, again, additional personnel to sustain the research during absences due to dependent care situations. The PIs who have career grants can also make these supplement requests. And as you can see from this slide, they can request up to 3 months of salary support for a research technician or equivalent, up to $12,000, not including fringe and indirect costs. So it's not a huge amount of money, but this cannot be one of these things where someone decides, I want to stay home for 5 years. But on the other hand, it's the unexpected sort of emergency situations that arise that can do the most damage in many cases. And then finally, and I was not aware of this until I actually prepared this presentation, but any NSFPI, if they have postdocs in their salary line, and their postdocs are in this situation, they can, where for whatever reason they need to take an emergency leave of absence, they can also, the PI can also request up to 3 months of salary support. And I encourage people to make these requests. I'm not claiming that 100% of the time it will be granted, because obviously funds have to be available, but there is our program directors need to be sensitized to this also. And I think as people make these requests internally, folks will realize that this is something that they need to pay attention to. I really want to impress on people the importance of changing perspectives and attitudes outside and inside. This slide describes an effort that has been it was actually not just part of the Career Life Balance Initiative. There, as you may be aware, there was an effort underway organized by the Office of Management and Budget to come up with uniform guidance for federal grantees. So rather than NIH grantees having one set of rules, NSF having another set of rules, USDA, there was a meeting that was held about 3 or 4 years ago, over a couple of years, to look at uniform guidance. So all federal PIs would be subject to the same rules. And one of the outcomes of the negotiations that took place regarding these rules was that if someone's traveling to a conference to present the NSF-funded research, for instance, or a conference related to their NSF-funded research, if they have unusual dependent care costs as a result of that travel, they can request in their budget funds for the extraneous dependent care cost. There are conditions. The costs have to be a direct result of the PI's travel for the NSF award, so it can't be completely unrelated. the only cost you can put in your grant budget are costs above and beyond what you would normally pay. So if you're normally paying, 40 hours a week for a babysitter, and then because of your travel you need 60 hours a week or the like, then you can only put in the delta. And then finally, the costs are only allowed if they are consistent with the institution's travel policy. And I mention this because I don't know who's in the room, but I'm hoping that the institutions that are represented in this room are thinking about this and putting policies in place that will allow your PIs to take advantage of this. I must admit I was very proud of my colleagues at NSF while these negotiations were taking place. I was at OSTP when this happened, so I was not part of the deliberations, but I sat in on these meetings, and NSF pushed for this very much. This is a concern that women have consistently raised when we have had conversations with our PIs. That there are additional costs associated with travel besides just hotels and meals that are not being addressed. We have had these issues raised when we've brought women and young and men who have young children to NSF for panels. So we've my colleagues in the policy office argued very strongly for this language in the uniform guidance. I must admit it was not a very popular position with other granting agencies, with other feds, in fact. So I was very proud and pleased proud of my colleagues and pleased with the results. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, I queried colleagues throughout NSF and asked for information on other programs geared towards early career and transition points and retention. And first of all, there are, and I must admit I didn't hear from everyone, so this is by no means a complete list. But the Geosciences Directorate does have an NSF postdoctoral fellows program. Both the Geosciences Directorate and the Engineering Directorates have had early career faculty mentoring workshops. Historically, the one in engineering, I believe, has focused, and it may be CBET, just one division. I'm not sure if it's directorate-wide, but it is. I know CBET has participated in this, but their early career faculty development workshops have focused on underrepresented minorities. And some divisions have special programs. For instance, Bio Directorate, I understand, is one of those directorates that has not had very many career proposals. I was very surprised to find that out. And as a result, they've implemented an early investigator award in plant genome research program. So the reason I'm citing that particular program is people have to take advantage of our website, which I think has, over the years, the 20 years I've been here, has improved. I would encourage people to look at the NSF website early and often, because things are changing constantly, and it's impossible for any one person, including me, to know everything that's going on throughout the foundation. So there are other opportunities. I would also encourage you to encourage your young investigators to contact the relevant program directors, because there are some things that I can't talk about today because they're in the FY17 budget request. They may be in the budget request, but things are changing. It's a very fluid and dynamic situation here. So finally, I want to cite some of the tables that were the sources of the data that I presented. The National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics is a phenomenal resource on the NSF website. It's much, much easier to use than it used to be. I remember when I first came here, I felt like I had to have a PhD in computer science to use it. These three tables in particular are the ones that I cited earlier, or provided the data that I cited earlier. The survey of earned doctorates, the 2012, the most recent table goes back to 1996. And the women, minorities, and persons with disability has data that report was just released, but the data in those tables go back to 1993. So it's a huge amount of information on degree attainment, et cetera, and broken down by gender, race, ethnicity, persons with disability, citizen, non-citizen, you name it. So I am going, unfortunately, I didn't give you guys as much time as I had hoped for questions, but I'm willing to entertain questions if we have time, and if you have additional questions that you think of later, please don't hesitate to send me an email. Thank you very much for your attention.
We'll take some questions here, and Joan, you'll have to let me know whether you hear the question. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and repeat it for you.
Good morning. Could you identify some of the directorates that don't get a lot of career applications? You mentioned biology, but are there other directorates that we should be aware of that aren't getting career applications?
Were you able to hear that, Joan?
No, could you repeat it, please?
So can you identify the directorates or programs that we're not getting as many career applications?
No, when I sent out the email asking people for division and directorate specific activities, the person who responded from biosciences, bio was the only directorate that specifically said they hardly got any career proposals. And it may have been a specific division in bio, but I was very surprised to see that comment, because I was in chemistry for 10 years before I came to this current office, and that was so not an issue in chemistry. So I was taken aback, and I don't know what the historical reasons are for that. I have no idea. I could try and find out a little bit more information, but I was kind of taken aback. I'll write myself a note.
So you mentioned the AGEP program, but there's no current RFP out. Do you know if that's going to be re-released?
So is there a new RFP going to be released for AGEP?
Ooh, I will find out. I don't know off the top of my head, but I will ask.
Okay. Other questions?
And Megan, if I don't know how I can communicate the answers to these questions. Should I send them to you, or will people follow up? If I'm unable to answer a question today, could I encourage the questioner to send me an email so I know how to get the answer to you?
Yeah, Joan, if you have answers to questions, to follow up, you can send those to Megan, and Megan will make sure we get it out to our attendees. And then,
okay.
Yep, and then we'll also give our attendees an opportunity to submit some questions too if they have them. And I'm sure they know that, as you said, you have your email address, and you can take them individually as well. So there's another question.
Okay.
Susan? Susan, did you have a question? Yeah.
Susan would like to know where the role of broader impacts falls in this discussion.
So, Joan, where do you see broader impacts in this whole conversation about support for faculty and diverse faculty? Are you there, Joan?
Well, yes, yeah, I'm thinking about the answer. You know, the role of broader impacts is key in many ways. The ability to broader impacts as people make efforts to translate their science into something that is more accessible for the broader community is going to be attracting people into the disciplines more. There's NSF is, for instance, playing a major role, an increasing role in this whole citizen science movement, for instance, which I am very excited about because I believe that is one way of bringing people from underrepresented groups, people from urban settings, into the science, into sciences more. Broader impacts, as faculty, I believe participating in broader impacts actually improves your science teaching. To me, broader impacts is all about taking something, a very somewhat esoteric, very narrow, discipline-based way of thinking and making connections that are not very obvious, that draw people in who, I can remember when I was doing research, I felt like I got to the point where I knew more and more about a narrower and narrower group of things, since I'm a high-resolution infrared laser spectroscopist by training. And it was really difficult to make those connections to people who were not doing almost the exact same thing I was doing. And as you think about explaining your research, making those connections outside of just that narrow little research area, I believe it makes you a much better teacher. It allows you to explain what you're doing to a broader community. It connects you to communities in ways that you don't normally think about. It makes it more real, especially if you're from a group that has not participated in science traditionally. As an African-American woman trying to explain what my chemistry was about in my community was a real challenge. And I think as I improved on that skill set, I was able to communicate the excitement of science much better, to connect to my students much better. I think you're a better ambassador for your institutions and for your discipline. I hope that answered the question. Maybe I missed it.
Okay, thanks. Other questions? We're just walking the microphone around, Joan, so it takes a moment.
No problem.
Thanks for your presentation today. My question, NSF seems to be at the head of the curve in terms of federal funding agencies and its career life balance programs and policies. Any Scooby on what's going on with other federal agencies, or NIH, DOE, et cetera? Are they considering similar policies?
Could you hear that question, Joan?
No, I'm sorry.
NSF is ahead of the curve on its policies, and do you have a sense for any of the other federal agencies, NIH, DOE, et cetera, on how they're supporting these policies? The career life balance policies.
Yeah, well, I think there's pockets of things that are happening. One of the programs, for instance, that Bernice Anderson may be able to better answer this because she's been doing career life balance. She's been involved in the career life balance and the CIOS efforts for quite a while. The Committee on Equal Opportunity in Science and Engineering is meeting today we actually do have liaison. That committee has liaisons from the other federal agencies, for instance, who come to the meeting and participate. And so there is a sharing of information. There, the uniform guidance language that I mentioned about the travel, that's something that's now in the uniform guidance. All agencies will have to accommodate that, okay? So that's an area. There are the Committee on Science and Co-STEM, one of the National Science and Technologies Committees, is agency-wide committees and subcommittees, and there are subcommittees on broadening participation, minorities in STEM, underrepresented groups in STEM. They are, again, agency-wide, not agency-wide, federal agencies, many federal agencies are participating in those committees. It's not just an NSF effort. I can mention specific activities that are co-funded by agencies. As I mentioned, I was in chemistry, and there's a group called COACH, which has been in existence probably 17 or 18 years, that originally was designed to, the goal of COACH was to provide support and training for women in chemistry so that, to break the glass ceiling, basically. You know, in many disciplines, women, even if they are in the research and teaching faculty, they're at the lower rungs. And how do we get women advancing to deans and vice provosts and even presidents of institutions? And COACH's role originally focused just on chemistry, but it had support from NSF, NIH, and DOE from the very beginning. It has since grown well beyond chemistry. It includes the geosciences and engineering, and perhaps physics, I believe physics. So that's one example of a multi-agency funded effort that's been in existence for a very long time. So, you know, there are efforts that are undergoing. NIH is a huge agency. I can't say that I'm an expert on what's happening at NIH. I do know NIH has looked at issues of their lack of diversity in their grantee pool. And they've implemented a number of policy changes and programs to address that. But NIH's issues are a little different than NSF because of the overproduction of the graduate in the biological sciences of graduate students, frankly, and with no clear career pathways. So NIH has a whole another set of issues that they're grappling with. So there is interagency collaboration and cooperation and consultation and committees on these topics where I am not involved in the NSTC committees. These are colleagues, and again, there are a number of NSF staff members, including the division director in human resource development, Sylvia James, who is a liaison, and not a liaison, she's actually a member of that committee. And there are other NSFers that are participating in some of those efforts. How much I can share, if I even knew anything, I'm not sure, because these are works in progress. But there is a lot of attention being paid to this in this administration, and as a result, agencies are definitely coming on board and doing more things, and hopefully doing more things together. Because of course, it would be great if we're all kind of doing things in cooperation with each other rather than having efforts going off in every direction. And I think that's a large part of some of these NSTC committee, their efforts are on finding a common plans and goals that all the agencies can participate in without reinventing the wheel.
Other questions? So Joan, I had one about, as you look at NSF working with universities, institutions of higher education, and you look at like what is working well, what's not working as well and should be improved in supporting STEM faculty success and retention. Would you have any observations, whether it's from your perspective in NSF or OSTP, or just even as a faculty researcher, and you hear from other faculty researchers, are there things that are working well in NSF and institutions trying to work together? As you said, if agencies work together, we might be able to move things along faster and farther. What about how you see NSF and institutions?
Well, one of the program that I'm mostly involved in right now is the Science and Technology Centers competition, or program, I should say. And there it's very interesting. I think that what is allowing many of these faculty members to succeed at these institutions is the ability to really do cutting-edge research that crosses boundaries. I think that is the future of academic departments, that people aren't going to be working just in academic departments. And I actually think that makes for a more successful faculty experience. I think where my observation running this program now since 2007 or 2008 is that faculty members are really thriving in an environment where there's a lot of interdisciplinarity, a lot of collaboration across disciplines, and I think that can make a big difference, particularly for women and faculty of color who aren't quite so isolated in their departments, so that there's a support network outside of their departments, which can make a big difference. Not all departments are as enlightened as others, and it helps to get people out of their silos. That's been my observation in the last 7 or 8 years, watching how these very, very multidisciplinary, cross-collaboratory centers are working. Some of these centers are doing phenomenal jobs of supporting women and faculty of color, and they seem to be thriving in that kind of an environment. So that would be my take-home lesson from my observations.
Okay, thank you. Any other final questions? Okay, thanks, Joan, very much. We appreciate your time.
You're quite welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will be going to our next session, so we don't quite have a break yet, although you'll be getting up and moving around. So Nancy Franz is going to introduce the next session to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see you're still sitting upright. After all that food and a little bit of being talked at, it's kind of hard to stay awake. You'll have a couple of moments to be able to take a break for interosmotic pressures and grab a warm beverage on your way to a focus group this morning. And we have chosen to socially engineer which group you're going to be in, because focus groups are supposed to have a common group. So there's something that you have in common with the people in your room. And there's no high science about it, so don't try to figure it out. Some of the things you'll want to know, one is that we'll be talking this morning about the institutional level of faculty success. So specifically, you know, the question is, there's a series of questions, but what is it that needs to be done at the institutional level? And then you'll get to the point of actually making recommendations that you'll write down on a flip chart and then bring back here to the room, and then your facilitator or someone in your group can simply just report out one salient thing off your list, but you can post them all over there so that people can review them during our closing session, because I'm guessing there are going to be a lot of promising practices that will come out of your conversations that you want to learn from each other. The other thing that you'll want to think about is making sure that you integrate into the conversations in your group the things that you talked about yesterday. Don't leave all of that behind. Build on that, especially because in the World Cafe yesterday, we started hearing you jumping into institutional conversations. So you were already ready and trying to do that. So keep remembering that faculty level conversation as you think about institutional and integrate it all together. And then the other thing is we have 3 of you who haven't signed your IRB form. We really do need that. We may come and search for you because we want to make sure that your comments, if you wish not to have them recorded in any way, are honored. So please, if you haven't turned that in yet, to see Megan about that. And then finally, what you'll want to know is how to get to your focus group and which one you're going to. So on your name tag, there should be a colored star. You all received a star for great behavior when you checked in. So if you have a star that's green, you might want to write this down. I know if you're like me, I'll go to the bathroom and then forget what room it was. If you're green, you are in the North Shore room. If you're gold, you are in the Mulford room, M-U-L-F-O-R-D, and I'll go through these all again since some people are still waking up. If you are silver, you are here in the Grand Ballroom in the back there. If you're red, you're in the Lake Michigan room. That was for the gorgeous red sunrise over the lake this morning. And if you're in blue, you're in the Evans room. And there will be people at the top of the stairs to help you find where those rooms are. They're all down this hallway, those 4 rooms. So I'll read them again for you. Oh, she's so good. So, feel free to get there as soon as you can. Bonnie, please.
And if you're a speaker and don't have a star, go up and talk to Megan.
Yeah.
Or if you don't have a star at all.
If you don't have a star, come see Megan, because we want to make sure we get the size of the groups about the same from room to room, and so we'll have you help us with that. So, any questions before you head out? All right, thank you. Have great conversations.